India's great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, I mean, they're just some of the most incredible, most sweeping stories ever told, period. But behind all the gods and the massive battles, there's this question that just never goes away. Is there real history hidden inside of them? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into a framework for finding it. So, the first question almost everyone asks is this one, right? Did these epic wars, these incredible adventures, did they actually happen? It's the most natural question in the world. But, as we're about to see, it might not be the most helpful place to start. You see, asking that question kind of traps us. It forces us into this black and white choice between two extremes. On one side, you've got pure myth, the idea that it's all just made up, gods and miracles, basically religious fiction. And on the other side, you have literal history, treating these epics like they're modern textbooks with perfect, verifiable facts and dates. But what if that whole framework is just wrong? Yeah, what if this is a total dead end? The argument we're exploring today is that this is a fundamentally flawed way to look at these texts. To get to a real, meaningful answer, we have to completely reframe the way we think about it. We have to start by asking a much better, much more historically appropriate question. Okay, so to find that better question, we need to zoom out for a second. Because this challenge, finding history inside these ancient epic stories, it is not unique to India at all. It's a global pattern. It's how we have to understand the past for pretty much any civilization before the age of professional historians. I mean, think about it for a second. This isn't just an Indian issue. What about ancient Greece before Herodotus, the father of history, or early Israel, or China before its imperial records, or even the founding of Rome? Their foundational histories, their sense of who they were, didn't come from neatly filed archives. No way. They were preserved in epic poems and songs and in oral traditions passed down from one generation to the next. And this is where the Indian tradition itself offers us this really powerful alternative. So if the epics aren't pure myth, but they're also not literal history, what are they? Well, they fall into a third category, a unique way of understanding the past called itihasa. The word itihasa, the translation from Sanskrit is so direct, it's incredible. It literally means, thus indeed it was. It's not a claim of fiction, it's a statement of remembered reality. It's a culture's way of saying, look, this is the story of our past, as we have carefully preserved it and passed it down. So let's be really clear about what this category actually means. Itihasa is not pure myth, but it's also not a modern history book with footnotes and precise dates. The best way to think of it is as a remembered past, a story that was transmitted orally for generations, all woven into this deep moral and cultural fabric. Its job was to preserve a people's collective memory, not to satisfy an archaeologist thousands of years in the future. Okay, so you might be thinking, if these texts are a remembered past and not a perfect chronicle, how on earth can a modern historian get any real, verifiable history out of them? Well, it turns out they have a toolkit designed for exactly that. To dig into a text like this, historians use this really rigorous 4-part test, and it's the same test they apply to ancient societies all over the world. First, they look at material culture. Do the weapons, the chariots, the cities described in the story match what archaeologists are actually digging up? Second, political plausibility. Does the social structure, the kings, the assemblies, does it align with what we know about how early states were formed? Third, is the geography real? Are the rivers, mountains, and cities mentioned actually consistent with the real landscape? And finally, fourth, was the event so huge, so world-changing, that it would create a transformational memory, a story that a civilization would feel compelled to tell itself for thousands of years? And this just perfectly illustrates the intellectual discipline we're talking about here. The source text puts it perfectly. No exceptional standards, no lowered bar, no special pleading. The point is, this isn't about giving the epic some kind of a free pass. It's about applying the exact same, consistent, academic methods that are used to study Homer's Greece or the founding of Rome. Okay, so that raises a pretty big question, right? If this historical method exists and it's used for other cultures, why were India's epics so often just dismissed as pure myth, while a text like, say, Homer's Iliad was scoured by archaeologists for its historical core? Well, the sources suggest it really came down to historical bias, not actual evidence. First, early European scholars kind of put Indian texts into a box labeled religion, while their own foundational stories, like the Bible or Greek myths, were allowed to be seen as both history and religion. Second, India's incredibly powerful oral tradition was just misunderstood. Instead of seeing it as a valid way of preserving history, they just saw it as a lack of written history. And finally, because these heroes and gods are still part of a living, breathing faith today, it was sort of wrongly assumed that the stories had to be pure imagination, instead of the remembered past of real historical figures. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, it gives us a really powerful new way to read these ancient works. It's like we're being handed a new lens to see the past more clearly than ever before. And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. The goal isn't to go through and try to prove that every single supernatural event is a literal scientific fact. The real goal is to read the epics as they were meant to be read, as a remembered past, one that's full of poetry and moral lessons, sure, but a past that is firmly anchored in the real social and political experiences of the people who lived in Iron Age India. And that leaves us with the final thought. Applying this lens helps unlock the historical core of India's incredible epics. But it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other histories from other cultures all around the world are just waiting to be uncovered if we simply stop asking the wrong questions and start asking the right ones?